For your job in Munich, what did you do to get that role?
As far as I remember, I initially for me, I wouldn't say it was shocking, but it was wow, it's very direct as approach. I interviewed a candidate that was from India, and I think he was so brilliant that I really talked with the HR, and we were able to, support his visa, and he eventually relocated from India to Barcelona. And
Hi, I'm here with Leonardo Lanni. Leonardo, could you please tell me a bit about yourself?
Sure. First things first, Nicola, thank you very much for having me here. It's such a pleasure talking to you and spending some time together. Quickly about me. So I'm Italian. Originally, I'm from Rome, and I've been living abroad for more than 10 years. My background is 16 years working in the QA area. And what I do living is I help companies with everything or anything which is QA, software testing related. So it could be quality engineering, it could be test automation, recruiting QA people. And one thing that I really care for is, coaching and mentoring the new generation of QA people, which is something that I really care for. And yeah, so that's basically me.
And it's great to have you here. Let's get into the questions. The first one I'd like to ask you. So you said that you are from Italy. Where do you
Mhm.
live currently?
So I'm currently based south of Barcelona.
In terms of the working style between Barcelona and or Spain and Rome, is there any differences that come to mind there?
Well, I'd say probably between the Italian and the Spanish or Catalan way of working. Similarities are more than differences. Where I think there are, something that it's a little bit different in the way of working, and it's with Munich, where I basically spent 5 years before I moved to Barcelona, where I'm currently based. In that case, definitely I can say that there are some differences in based on the culture, the way of working. It's definitely something which is very intriguing and something that I discovered just every day with my own experiences, and it is something that I would say it has really enriched me as a human being because you learn to see things from a different perspective and angle, and that makes you really like grow as a person.
Could you give some examples of differences or any struggles that you faced from, or if not just specifically with Barcelona, any examples in your work life when you were in Munich?
Depending on the country, people may appreciate different things. One thing that, for instance, that was very appreciated in Munich was being on time. This is something, it's something that is expected by your colleagues and by the people you're working with. While maybe in the Italian and the Spanish culture, it is a little bit more, laid back. You can be maybe a couple of minutes late and everything is all right. Even though at the end of the day, it's something that depends on also on the company culture. Startup are a little bit more laid back, while more, let's say, old-fashioned structured company, they tend to be a little bit more structured about that. Other things that I think interesting and worth to be mentioned are like what I refer to as verbosity. So let's say
Sorry.
verbosity. So how much your talking style in terms of how redundant you are in the way you're talking. When I was in Munich, there is a tendency to be very dry in the communication. You tend to go quite straight to the point, and there is some efficiency and quite good transparency. In the Latin culture, it's a little bit more the other way around. There is a little bit of small talk. There is a little bit of you're chitty chatty, and you can express concepts with many more words than the minimum. It's just the way I think Latin cultures are. Talking is a way of expressing yourself, and therefore it's something that it gets appreciated rather than going straight to the point. Which leads me also to another topic, which is the directness in the communication. When I used to work in Munich, it was quite common, to have a very direct communication. So let's say somebody does something that is not right, other people would tell this person, I wouldn't say brutally, but very straight to the point, and they would basically say, listen, this is not acceptable, or this is wrong, you should have done the other way around. Initially for me, I wouldn't say it was shocking, but it was, wow, it's very direct as approach, because I come from a less confrontative culture where, people may lead you, through talking, to let you understand that, you may have done something not right, but the approach would be much more, let's say, soft and, not that direct. But on the other hand, what I really, really appreciate when I was working in Munich was, the transparency and the honesty. No string attached. The moment something is not right, they would tell you. You'd appreciate the feedback. You would learn from that. You would move on, and and everything is great. People are not looking back in anger. You just move on, and this is something that, in terms of embracing things from a different cultural standpoint, this is something that really, it really brought value for me.
When you moved to Germany
Hmm.
and worked in Munich, do you remember how long it took you to realize that what you were experiencing was a cultural difference? And just to elaborate by what I mean
Hmm.
is when it comes to cultural differences, sometimes they're they're obvious that there's something happening, but then you don't know if it's like these individuals who happen to be very direct, or it happens to be these individuals who are very timely, or is it actually a bigger thing happening and that you're now in this new environment in which the new rules apply? Do you remember like how long it took to click?
Well, it's a very good question. So I would say, the first thing that I think it was very key for me, when I made my decision to move, I was really, unbiased. I was very, I really didn't know too much what to expect, because in my case, the decision and the process was quite fast. So therefore, I really moved to Munich with a embracing spirit. And what I can tell you is that every day I got my little experiences that, help me realize the cultural differences. Sometimes there are things were really, really funny. There is an example something that I sometimes discuss with my friends. We tend to give a lot of basic little things for granted, that they're done the way they're done in our own country. For instance, when you greet people in the Italian culture, you kiss on the cheek left to right, and this is something that I realize abroad in many other countries is right to left, the American culture, the German culture. And this is something I never knew, and I learned in a funny way, the hard way, because, you're greeting somebody, you both moving in the same direction, and you're like, oh my God, what are you doing? And the other person is like, what are you doing? And then you just, oh my God, I didn't know that, such a basic thing like greeting people can be done in a symmetrical but different way. Something also that was quite funny, but it was a little bit more into the business world. I was in a meeting one of the first days in my first company, Munich. When the meeting ended, all my German colleagues started to knock on the table.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I thought, oh my God, I actually end up doing the same, but I do that probably is like a ritual. And then I asked, and they told me, well, it's our way. Instead of clapping, we prefer to knock, on the table. But and then, I embraced that. I thought it was very, very cool. And I remember one of the next meetings, I was one of the first person, because I really enjoyed the conversation. I knocked on the table, and then, there are a lot of those episodes, not necessarily all the time everything was smooth. Sometimes you just, you may end up doing something which is not really tolerated or accepted, and you don't know it. And it is what it is. You just learn, smile, and say, oh, I didn't know that this thing is not really accepted here. And you just move on. And it's all learning. And as long as you keep open mind, and you embrace the difference, and you appreciate that, because you just realize things can be done differently, people can see things in a different way, and you grow by learning that. But you really have to keep your an open mind when you live abroad.
I actually remember I've worked in Germany, but I don't remember the knocking tables when I was working. But I remember it when I was studying in Germany. after lectures. So it's yeah, it's just funny hearing you share that story.
Yeah.
Um,
I,
yeah.
and no, no, I was saying I don't know if it's a local thing from Munich or it's national thing, but yeah, it's something very very unique and very very funny. Then you get used to that, you understand it, but initially it was wow, what are people doing?
Yeah, and the timeliness one I could also relate to because in my previous company, one of our clients was German. They're based
Mhm.
in Munich, and when we had online meetings, you can trust that at like say 10 o'clock on the dot, all the
Yeah.
Germans were online, and then us, the Swedes would kind of trickle in at 10:01, 10:02. And I just found that quite interesting because I had heard about how certain cultures are more punctual than others, and then the directness as well. I remember they wouldn't sugarcoat if they weren't happy with how things are going. They would just say, "This is not good. We expect better," or whereas in Sweden, it'd be more of a sugar, not say sugar coated, but yeah, sugar coated, gentle way of approaching things. So I do, yeah, I can relate to those differences. I'm not sure if
It's
maybe the communication style in Sweden is more similar to what you might have experienced in Italy, but yeah.
Yeah, so I think it's similar. And the other thing is that then you really start to doubt what is the real message that people are telling you. So
Mm.
you appreciate directness because sometimes it hurts, but at least you know exactly what they were trying to tell you. And at the end, you get used to that, and I do appreciate it.
It's, I remember I had this a bit of a misunderstanding in my team where two people in my team they were asked to like they said another person another team that needed a bit of help with the test automation said uh, you you could join our stand-ups, you could join our meetings if you want, so something like that, which really implied choice, and that
Hmm.
and at least to me it implied that would have been okay if they did not join, but it was actually this implicit expectation that they would join, so when they did not do it, whereas I'm more direct. So it goes both ways where
Yeah,
I say, you should do this. I expect you to do this.
yeah,
Or I
exactly.
go, hey, here's an idea. Feel free to reject it. And then I'm also
Mm.
explicit about the fact that it's okay to then also say no. Because they're like, yeah, they said to me, oh, we're used to you being so direct that when yes, so it's, yeah, a little bit funny. I want to take a little bit of a different direction. How did you go about finding a job in another country?
I think, there are multiple ways. I would definitely suggest, networking. It's really, really powerful. And, if you happen to, let's say, to have a friend of yours which is already in the place you're trying to move, and, you may be already working for a company where you potentially could be a fit, or you may know somebody, one of his acquaintances that could help you. So I think networking is a very, very powerful way. And, we tend to trust more the people that we know. So that would be basically my first option. But, it really depends if you have, let's say, relevant people in your network that could help you with your move. More classic approaches would be things like, LinkedIn. Whether we like it or not, it's probably one of the biggest platform where you can apply for jobs, connect to people. I think sometimes you may even be, let's say, brave and write directly to, to the CTO, to the head of QA, or talking about our, scope. Say, listen, I see your company, is producing this. I can probably, notice that you have a struggle in this area. I would be like a fit. My unique selling point would be this, and that. You can try to write to a lot of CTOs or CEOs or head of QA, or whichever is your department, knowing that of course is a big number game. So you may not get any feedback, but that doesn't mean it's anything wrong with you. You have to be very persistent, very focused. You have make the universe work it for you, and don't lose your hope in case things are not moving fast. Patience is key. But
Mm.
I really suggest to write to people because they can really make the magic happen. More classic ways could be you can go directly to a company, look for open positions and apply. You can look for those job aggregators platform. You can just put a simple query like, I don't know, QA jobs in Barcelona or London or Zurich or whatever. Apply wherever you see fit, wherever you like the company, you like their value, you think you would be, good working there. And those would be, my typical approach. Referral is also a good way. There are companies that say, hey, we're looking for a QA. If you happen to know somebody, please refer it to us. So you may be in a situation where a friend of yours is working in the city you want to move to, and they're looking for a QA. That would be a win-win because your friend would recommend you. He would get, money for the referral. He would provide the company a good connection, which is yourself, and that would be absolutely a winning way. I had a couple of times those things, and I think if you refer a friend of yours or you refer, you're helping people, you get help, and it's just amazing, I think.
For your job in Munich, what did you do to get that role?
Far as I remember, I Googled role in the QA area. I was an SDT back in the days, and I see a couple of companies. I did a little bit of search and I saw one company which was absolutely great. It was growing. It was an international environment. And I applied. To my surprise, I got contacted the next day and I thought, oh my God, this is so fast. And I have to say, in my case, things moved very, very fast. I had an interview and they liked me. And actually, I could not believe my eyes. All the things were so efficient and fast compared to the Italian way that tend to be over bureaucratic with a lot of red tape, a lot of complex processes. So I decided to know it was too good to be true. So I decided to fly to Munich and see this company with my own eyes because it was so good. And surprise, it was exactly the way the company was described, and I could not be happier. And then I just made it happen. It was probably one of the best decisions that I've ever done because it is led to many other great things in my life, in my private life, in my working life. One thing that is very important, I really think people should do that because living abroad is really something that widen up your horizon, your way of thinking, your mindset. What could be the worst thing? If it doesn't work, you can always find something back home. People tend to think, oh my God, I screwed it. I had a job. I promise you that if things don't work good, you will always find something back home and you learn something. There is always learning in everything. So, but I think it's more likely that things will go in the right direction and you will embrace it and you will enjoy it.
I mean, I really have enjoyed getting to learn different cultures from living overseas. But one thing I do want to highlight for the viewers is that you moved from an EU country to another EU country.
Mhm.
So visas would not have been an obstacle for you. And as I understand, you wouldn't have needed sponsorship or there wouldn't have been extra paperwork.
No, so if you move to your point, if you move from an EU to an EU country, it's relatively straightforward. There is definitely some red tape in the country. You have to, for instance, in Germany, you need to register, you need to have a social security number, but I think those are basics. Of course, if you come from a not EU country, you will need some visa and sponsorship, so it's a little bit more complex, but it's doable. The moment a company really can see value and they would make it happen. In one of my recent job, I interviewed a candidate that was from India, and I think he was so brilliant that I really talked with the HR, and we were able to, support his visa, and he eventually relocated from India to Barcelona, and he was the happiest, and we were the happiest because he was absolutely a talent, and for me it was very, very good because he thanked me that I helped him having a better life, but equally a knee player in my team, and I was so happy. Cut long story short, it's not easy, but it's absolutely doable, and you have to believe it. People should never surrender. Anything can happen. You just need to be persistent, but also patient, because those are complex process, but they're doable.
Okay, I want to dig a little deeper into that experience of yours hiring someone from outside the EU.
Yeah.
or like for example when you hire someone from India to come to Barcelona. And I want to hear, because I do get contacted a lot about moving overseas, and I've done some videos on like things to keep in mind and how not all companies offer sponsorship.
Hmm.
But say for you, do you remember when you chose this person, knowing that there'd be extra work involved, that you'd have to wait longer for that person to come possibly? How did this person stand out so that you were like, you know what? This person is who we want. We will do the extra paperwork. We will wait a little bit
Hmm.
longer. There's a bit of there's a higher risk. Like, do you remember what that person did to like
Yeah.
convince you to do that extra work?
Yes, I definitely remember. So it was a combination of soft and hard skills. What I really, really like is the way he would answer my interviewing questions. He showed a really like out of the box thinking, and he had the bigger picture in his mind. It was very, let's say, the opposite of a lot of people unfortunately tend to prepare interviews and try guess the questions and have those prepare answer, which after a little while that you are on the interview inside, you kind of understand this behavior, and it's understandable, but it's not the best. In this case, I could see a lot of spontaneity, and I could see a lot of, once again, creative thinking. This was one thing. The other thing was definitely a, a great team attitude. So in terms of soft skills, his way of communicating was very, very nice. So was effective, was the right mix of direct but also constructive. And my gut feeling told me, he was a nice person. And from some questions that I asked directly, and talking about the attitude, he was a real team player. And eventually, when he moved to Barcelona, I could see that likely I was right. And he was, one of those persons that would pose his stars to come and help any team member that was, having trouble or whatsoever. And for me, I was very, very proud because, it was, you help somebody to hopefully have a little bit of a better life. But on the other hand, you also, the return on investment, you find a real talent, and you brought it to your company, and and that was absolutely great.
Okay. I'm glad to hear it really worked
Yeah,
out and that what you saw in him in the interview turned out to be an accurate representation of what you were in for later on.
yeah.
What experience do you have working in multicultural teams?
I think it's one of the best thing that has happened to me in my professional life, and it's something that I really wish anybody and everybody to have this experience. It's what is really, really great is like you start to see that people think differently than you. Myself, for instance, back in my days, I used to work for a long time in IBM in Rome, and most of the people we all came from similar background. We're mostly Italians, and our way of working, our way of facing challenges or problems were tended to be quite similar. As I move abroad, and I started to notice how different people from different nationalities, they really have a different way of solving a problem, facing a problem. Also, the attitude, the behavior is different, and there is so much learning if you don't go with the mindset I'm right, you're wrong, but no, you embrace it and you just observe how other people tend to approach problems and challenges. There is so much learning, and then it becomes something that you add to your toolkit, because the next time you have a problem, you don't have just your way of thinking that comes from your growing up, your education, your schooling and whatsoever, but you also learn how different people would solve the problem, and you can try to emulate and do things differently, and at least you have options. And to me, this is one of the best thing. But the secret is really don't have bias, don't judge people, but embrace and learn.
And have there been any challenges, or what challenges have you experienced with working in multicultural teams?
Sometimes it's really like you need to, let's say, fine tune a little bit your style in, for instance, communicating. Your way of communicating may not match exactly other cultures, so you need a little bit to understand how they communicate, and then you need, to fine tune your style. Some countries tend to be quite direct and not metaphoric in the communication, so you have to be very clear the way you talk. In other countries, you can be a little bit more picturesque or metaphoric, or say things by examples, and people would prefer this style rather than going a little bit into telling people what they have to do. So you have the way you communicate. You may make mistakes. It's absolutely fine. The most important thing is that you learn from those mistakes. Over time, you really start to have sort of a sixth sense and how to communicate with people from different countries, and it becomes a skill, because then people really like you if you're effective in the way they communicate.
What advice do you have for people who want to move to another country for work?
My advisory would be really, you have to want it. You really have to have a burning desire to want it. You have to keep it positive. You have to think that you are elevating your life to the next level. You will learn so much. You will change your point of view on things. You will embrace a new culture. You will meet amazing people. You just need to get excited and think of, I'm gonna move to another city. It's not just about working. It's also about lifestyle. Embrace social event, meet people. It's great to have people from your own nationality already live there, because they can help you with the first steps and whatsoever. But it's also, great to start to, hang out with your colleagues and see things through their local eyes. Just embrace it. And, there could be challenges, but at the end of the day, when you sum up the positive versus the negative, the positive is much more, and you will be so, so happy of your decision. I can promise you this.
Before we go, if people wanted to get in contact with you or learn more about you, where should they go?
I'd say probably the easiest way is through LinkedIn. Search for myself, or I could share my LinkedIn page, and they can write to me. And I'm normally quite fast, and I try to write back to all the messages I receive. My email is also a great way to get in touch with me. When people write to me, they really make my day, and really like the type of person I like to communicate. I like to try to give a little bit of what I've learned, and especially for me, taking care of the new generation is something that really gives me joy. So anytime people are willing to be in touch with me, I'm super happy.
Sweet. Thanks heaps for your time, and I'm going to include the links in the description below.
Mhm.
Have a good evening.
Thank you very much, Nicola, and for the time, and have a good evening. Thank you.